City of Stevens Point Public Policy and General Government Meeting, recorded June 10, 2024.
I will call the meeting of the Public Policy and General Government to order at 6:29. Clerk Yenter, would you please call roll?
Kiemer.
Here.
Bird.
Here.
Steinmetz.
Here.
Lang.
Where'd he go?
Buzz here.
Seriously, he was right here. Sam?
I mean, restroom, maybe?
He's coming.
Is that already been approved too? Finder's fee?
Right. Second. Roll call. Lang.
Here.
Boozy.
Here.
All right, very good. All right, moving on to number 2, our license list is fairly long, so what I will suggest, if there's no objections from staff and the committee, is that we would take items 2A through E, which are all our renewals, pulling Icon, which is number 4, E4, for separate consideration.
That's good.
All right, so to begin, on our license list, we have our Class A beer and liquor license for Home to Suites at 3317 John Jonas. For item B, we have a 3 Class A beer and liquor license renewals for Refuel Pantry at their 3 locations. Item 2C is a Class B beer license for Stevens Point Legion Baseball Club beginning June 18th, and then also renewing for July 1st separately. And then D, 1 through 3 are Class B beer license renewals for Mama Mai's Noodle, Stevens Point Legion Baseball Club beginning July 1st, and Big Garlic, which is now downtown on Main Street. And item E are Class B beer and liquor. We have over a dozen of those that are all renewals. Is there a motion from the committee?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Burr. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, we'll go second for Boozy. Any questions, discussion from the committee? Any comments from law enforcement?
No issues.
Any from the public? All right, all those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And then the item that we pulled, E4, is for Icon. I guess I would look for an update from the attorney and staff. Is there any new information?
I believe the license holder is here.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe get them up first.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, did you guys have anything you want?
Any comments from the license holders?
Yeah.
Okay.
John Tremmel, the owner, is here. He is the license holder. I'm attorney Tammy Levitt-Jones. I've been assisting them, working with the city attorney on some of the issues that I know have been of concern. John wanted the committee to know they've had meetings with police. We've had numerous discussions with the city attorney. They have a scanning system in place regarding IDs. Do you want to grab the folder for me? Since there have been a few citations, they have changed some of their procedures. This is a stack of fake IDs that have been confiscated since the April ticket. Their scanning system has had some updates. They also have hired older observers to work with their door people to make sure that the procedures are being followed. I think that this amount of fake IDs since April 21st is concerning. A lot of these will pass inspection. They passed the light inspection. And it's just having a few older people checking the checkers at the door that has, I think, improved that, but they're making an effort. They also have committed through discussions with me to training more of their staff other than simply those required on responsible beverage service training, and I think that they intend to get that going in the next month or two as soon as classes are available for their staff. And we're prepared to take questions if there are any.
Are there any questions from the committee?
I have one. I heard that there was, at one point before the April incident, an underage person in Icon who had passed out, and they were refused assistance by the people that worked at Icon. Would that still be the MO moving forward?
We've actually never refused assistance. If anybody has a concern, usually it ends up on my lap, and I take care of it, no matter what it is, whether it's grabbing a female bartender to go into the women's bathroom or going into the men's bathroom or whatever the concern might come across. Usually, for the most part, people drink elsewhere. There's not a lot of spend there, so they're coming from somewhere else, and we're trying to take care of that. But directly, yeah, we don't do that. You know, whether it's rumor or hearsay, we have people that look at that right away. I'm actually a trained first responder, so we look at that.
I also think in examining some of what's out on social media versus print media, there have been some things that are somewhat misleading. That may be one of them, the hearsay. And I don't know if you've played telephone in your lifetime, but as the story gets told on down the line, I think some things are not conveyed accurately. The owner actually would invite committee members to come and observe their procedures. I don't know if most of us have been in a bar in our lifetime. Most of us have been there when there's entertainment and there's IDs being checked. If you look at what they are doing there to try to make sure that people who are already intoxicated aren't served. People who have issues with law enforcement are banned. Their scanning system has people on a ban list, and if they present their ID, they are refused admission. Two very undesirable characters in recent months were denied admission to Icon when they intended to go there and were not allowed access. So we would invite you to stop by on a night that they're open and actually look at their procedures for getting in the place and how they're monitoring what's going on there.
Are there any other questions from the committee?
Could I see that stack of fake IDs?
In our first year, we did turn over most IDs that we did.
This is just from April, you say?
Yes.
Why do you feel your business is such a draw to people where there's this kind of IDs being seized at your doors?
They serve
This is just
alcohol.
from April. There's other businesses in our downtown that serve. Why are this many fake IDs at your guys' doors?
Those fake IDs are actually at all the places here in town, whether it's pick and
So
save.
they're not being confiscated, is what you're saying? They get used and
These IDs are used everywhere. They just happen to be, and a lot of those
You
aren't
guys
even
are the ones catching it?
Huh?
It's just your business that catches?
They're the only ones with a scanning system that's more likely to catch it.
And we're also doing double light.
Oh, okay.
So we're doing flashlights. Usually we're just using the black light because it does the holograms, and it also does what the white light
You're
does.
saying many of these pass that system?
Correct.
Okay. So how
The only
did
way
you
to
defeat-
find some of the fakes is actually run them on the DOD database, which we can't do. Well, you were witness to that on that night.
It's a lot. It's this is I know college just let out and there's the end of the year thing, but this looks like there's a lot of
There's a dog
people
ID in there too.
attempting to
'cause
use.
Somebody tried to use it. Yeah.
There is this, say, perception in the community, because I fielded several calls today about this, that your reputation at Icon is a destination for those who would look to be a underage that would get served. And this, to me, says there's some truth to that. If you want to get served as an underage, try your luck at Icon.
So even last year when they were coming in and we were refusing service, we actually followed them. We didn't confiscate IDs. We followed them, and they would go right into another bar. And, this was not this past year, but the year before, and we were doing that on a regular basis. And it's like, okay, everyone we refuse goes somewhere else. A lot of the people that come there, like I said before, were drinking somewhere else. They just come to dance.
They just come to dance. So if that's the case, what do you need a liquor license for?
Well, we do still serve alcohol.
Oh, okay, but if
On
people show up
average,
just to
they
dance,
spend, on average.
just be a
it's-
dance club then. Like, you'd have a lot more, like, market share. You could go from like 16 and up if you're not serving alcohol.
Well, 21
They
and
just
under.
come there to dance, and that's the case. If there's truth to that, you'd have a lot more people in our community that could frequent your business.
Is there any other questions? Yes?
In relation to the volume of fake IDs that you got since the April citations, what is it that you're doing different now that catches these fake IDs
We actually just started
than you did?
keeping them. We never kept them because we didn't know the legal things, and after a few conversations with everyone, we're allowed to keep them. Because sometimes the ID is actually real. A friend of mine's ID will
You
actually,
could confiscate fake IDs?
we don't know officially if they're fake. So we're afraid on the legal matters of taking somebody's ID. Like one of my
And it
friends.
didn't occur to you to call and ask?
When we have asked, that's why we started confiscating.
Okay. I mean, because you've been in business a while.
Yeah.
And this isn't your only club, correct?
Yeah, we've got one other one. Or I've got
Okay.
one other one.
All right. But you only asked after April? When did you ask about being able to keep the fake IDs?
They started consulting with council in March.
Yeah.
March?
Yeah.
Okay, but prior to that, it didn't occur to
Because
you?
there's a lot of
Check.
IDs that are real that won't pass the flashlight test, the older IDs anyway. And if we
All right.
take that, there's a legal matter of, we just took somebody's legal document. So that's why we're afraid to confiscate. But again, we've got legal counsel and have been
Yeah,
working with
That's
city
a
attorney.
big stack.
Yeah.
And every one of those people were denied entry.
Are there other questions from the committee?
I would like to follow up on your question about what has changed in this sense, because another thing I heard is there's this, once you get in, you get a wristband. Is there truth to that?
Yes.
Okay.
So to get a wristband requires an ID.
Okay.
But then we also do invisible ink.
And invisible ink. Okay. So a wristband, what prohibits somebody, I guess, from walking back out of the club and swapping a wristband with their underage friend so that they can get back in?
So we actually had that going on the first year we were open. There was people outside selling wristbands. So we went to custom wristbands. And then people were doing that. And so when they come back in, one, Blacklight gets the invisible ink stamp that's on their hand. You can't get a stamp without getting your ID checked. You can't get a wristband without getting your ID checked. These are all the steps we put in place. And in a dark room, it lights up like a Christmas tree when you hit it with a black light.
I'll tell
And
you
then-
how I thwarted that system in my underage days. I'd lick your stamp and I'd go, my buddy. And now we both got your ink on us and people.
Now you just told everybody else how to do
I was
it.
just saying, it's like, that's not a very good system if we're trying to protect people from, like, you can walk right past somebody who died in a drunk driving accident when you come into this room. To protect our community, we got to have a system in place that we can trust keeps as much of this from happening as possible.
So we have looked for recommendations from the police department and others of, well, what more can we do? Because we're already doing more than is required by law, and I'm not saying we don't want to do less. We even had asked the police department to come in and let them check IDs. I know they were busy that weekend when we asked to start doing that. We were willing to pay the police department to stand at the door.
We want to make sure everyone who has questions has an opportunity. Is there anyone in the audience who has comments or questions they would like? Is there no one's online? I guess I have a question, I guess, for both council. Like, what happens if there's another citation or another violation?
I believe the city ordinance is 3 and 3 months.
And we've hit 3.
Not in 3 months.
3 months.
Not in 3
Not 3
months.
months, okay.
I do have a handout for the committee if they want it. We did have a retired police officer come into the nightclub, make recommendations, make observations, and also visited several other Stevens Point establishments. I have that report for committee members, and I also have some information on the scanning system that they are using. And I'm not aware of anyone else in Stevens Point that's using that kind of system, trying to make that kind of effort.
All documentation should go through the clerk right there at the end.
I will hand that to you then.
All right, I guess moving forward, is there a recommendation from the city attorney or for staff on how to proceed? I'm assuming if there is a third citation in 3 months, then that legal action will ensue, and then there will be a decision from the courts one way or another.
So the reference to 3 months is conflating a couple different things. So the 3-month reference there is probably referring to an aspect of our chronic nuisance ordinance. Here you're talking about alcohol licensure under Chapter 125 of the state statutes, and then the ordinance that we have to implement that. So they're really two different things. Now, is there potentially some crossover there in terms of the chronic nuisance ordinance perhaps being a tool that could be brought to bear with regards to these types of situations? Absolutely. We have experience with that. A few years back, we utilized the chronic nuisance process with regards to graffitis. However, the incidents that triggered that were not so much age compliance for alcohol type issues. It was more that there was fights with injuries, thefts, like some like unwanted groping type stuff. So sexual assault type matters that were leading to some of those fights. And ultimately, we did go through that process, and the owner had to come up with a plan to put into place to try to stop future incidents of that type from happening. So a bit different thing. The sort of timetable aspect there is within Chapter 125, again, that is the state statute for alcohol licensing, is that you cannot use a violation of the age provisions it can't be considered in the context of licensing unless at least 2 of them happen within a 12-month period. Now, obviously, that sounds like a pretty low threshold. What I can tell you is, well, first off, nuts and bolts type things, it is somewhat awkward for me to stand at this podium and talk to you about this because of the role of this committee, the role of the council, the role of myself, and the way that procedures happen with regards to licensing, particularly actions that could be taken against a license. So if you just presume that there is an action taken against a license, that can kind of happen 2 different ways. That could be a non-renewal, or it could be based on a complaint and then an action to terminate a license. Or suspend it. There's also the ability to suspend a license. So that would be in the form of a hearing before the Common Council, not this body. This body makes a recommendation to the council. Now, in that, there would let's just suppose for the sake of discussion that is a complaint-based hearing. So some member of the community, typically you'd see something like the chief of police would file a complaint that they'd swear to and say, I have knowledge that these events happen and all this stuff. Then the license holder and the complainant would be parties before the Common Council. They would have the opportunity to have legal counsel. They could call witnesses. They could subpoena witnesses. They present evidence. You could have a hearing that goes on for many, many hours. And then you'd have the council who is, conducting it, kind of traffic cop, acting sort of in a quasi-judicial capacity, acting kind of like a judge. can ask its own questions of witnesses, et cetera, and then ultimately makes a decision. Now, the council in that type of situation is going to need its own legal counsel that would be separate from the legal counsel for the complainant, even if the complainant is a city staff member, for example. So you end up then at the awkwardness I'm referring to, which is, which role would I fill in the event that one of those types of things would happen? And based upon that, you can end up with complications if I have made certain types of statements to council members ahead of time. So it gets to be a bit awkward, and the added awkwardness we have here is that all of these conversations have unfolded, and these particular incidents that led to the citations that were issued to the license holder occurred at a time of year that just happens to coincide with our licenses turning over. So that is a bit of a complicating factor. So then you have the added element of, this was running through my head today, what if the Common Council had a closed session next week to hear advice from its legal counsel on a matter that could become litigated? Well, this certainly seems like that, doesn't it? Well, okay, now I'm sitting in a closed, confidential setting advising the same people who would be making a decision in a hearing that's supposed to be based on the evidence that's brought forward at a hearing. Well, that doesn't work. That would be like me having a private meeting with a judge to talk about a lawsuit before I filed it. That is not okay. So what I can tell you is at this time, I am not recommending that any adverse action be taken on this license, at least not in terms of an action that would revoke the license or suspend the license. There is, I was going through some advisory materials from a presentation that a former assistant city attorney in Milwaukee had made regarding licensure matters years back for the League of Municipalities that included another option that I may be able to recommend to the council next week, but I don't want to discuss that with you quite yet. But based on the events that have happened so far, the status of the citations, most of which, one of them was defaulted. There was an effort to reopen that. That request to reopen it was denied, and the appeal period on that has ended. So there is one citation that the license holder has been found guilty of. The rest of those citations remain open. We're still having discussions with John and his legal counsel on that. But at this time, I would not recommend any adverse action against the license.
Thank you.
Sure.
If we were to postpone this until the legal concludes, are we in effect suspending it? Or are they allowed to continue to operate as they are?
When the clock strikes midnight at the end of this month, they would no longer have a license and they would be operating contrary to law. So postponing, I do not think would have any meaningful difference from refusing to renew it.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the committee for the attorney? I guess I do have one final one, just to make sure I'm clear. We have an advisory role to counsel this committee. From what I'm understanding from you, from the state statute, is that we can approve or deny this renewal, but we cannot, like, say, create or propose like a probation or some other, like, I mean, is it within the committee's jurisdiction to propose something kind of in between, or is it
Like
really
6
just
months or 3 months?
Yeah, or is it really just a yes, you can renew, or no, you cannot?
So when I first started as city attorney, I can't remember exactly how this came up, but just conversationally behind the scenes, talking to maybe somebody with the police department, clerk's office, I can't recall. It was a long time ago. I remember hearing this idea of a 6-month renewal, a probationary renewal of a license. And I had just taken for granted that that must be a thing that actually exists under the law, but I'd never really had to investigate it thoroughly because there was never a situation that came up where anybody was kind of contemplating something like that. Well, looking into it, as best I can tell, it's at least not something that's contemplated by the statute. Now, there's the question, so I mean, you have the statute and then you have local ordinances that adopt and implement the statute. Now, is there the ability to have a local ordinance implementing Chapter 125 that creates that type of mechanism? I'm not certain. I haven't seen any case law to break that down. I haven't seen anything in the statute that, you know, necessarily says you can or can't do that. But as best I know, based on my research I've done so far, that's not something that is explicitly authorized under the law. And as such, would not be recommending that you take any of that type of step right now.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like sort of a quasi-judiciary action on our part to kind of interpret the law or create new law.
Right.
Okay.
And just to clarify one additional point, with regards to a non-renewal of a license, there is a statutory requirement to provide a notice to the license holder that there is the potential for non-renewing the license, which is another curious thing because...
What would serve as notice in this?
Well, it would be a written document that is, provided in, in a certain manner and all that.
Not just an agenda.
Right, and it's, a notice providing at least a certain period of time ahead of when that matter will be taken up. I can't remember the exact number of days of sort of heads up that you have to provide on that off the top of my head. But the curious thing is, well, who decides whether there's the possibility for that? Who issues the notice? That's not clarified either. So it is a little bit of a messy thing when you have the licensing body also being the one that would somehow have to tell someone ahead of time, like, hey, we're thinking about not renewing this, because I don't know how you have an agenda item to arrive at the action of sending that notice. Again, it's not every statute under the sun is written with all the questions answered within its four corners.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Mayor.
So in the interest of making this a little less lengthy, might I recommend, and remind you what the city attorney said, that action regarding the license can be brought forward through several mechanisms, including a complaint. Could I recommend that you approve the license without condition, without time limits, and should at some point in the future there's reoccurrences, it sounds like the owner is taking some additional steps to make this not happen, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, that sort of thing. Taking some steps to rectify the situation, working with the police department. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, again, at any time, a complaint can be brought against the owner or the license holder, and a hearing can happen at that time.
Two things. First of all, Mayor, the accurate quote is, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, won't get fooled again.
No, that was Pete Townsend.
No, it was our former President Bush. Anyway, the other thing, and this is important, renewing the license here does not mean condoning any of the events that have happened there in the last 4 or 5 months, nor does it mean that those events could not ever be brought forward as evidence in an action regarding the license. I think that's the crucial thing here, and I kind of think that perhaps some people's thinking has been influenced by an assumption that, if we renew this, then we're kind of putting a stamp of approval on things that have happened there in the recent past, and that's not the case. All those things still could be considered in the future if there is an action to bring that forward.
Thank you.
Another question I'd have is, do we have like a time frame for a resolution on these legal matters that they're looking at?
So it's just kind of, it's not like we have a date set in stone or any sort of drop dead date on that type of thing. Now, without getting too into the weeds on the minutia here, what I can tell you is that I've put together a spreadsheet with regards to the incident where the police did the sort of large-scale compliance check, and I've got 39 citations that were issued to people for being present underage, and then, data that goes along with that. However, there was one citation issued to the license holder for that. Now, any one of those 39 citations could serve as adequate basis, of the 39 underage drinking citations could serve as an adequate basis for the citation to the license holder. Well, as you can imagine, that could start to become a little bit of a complicated thing to hash out in terms of evidence if there was ultimately a trial on the citation issued to the license holder, because they have the right to be able to bring forward evidence to support a defense on all of those. The defense has a number of elements that are stated, and there's a provision in the statutes that says if a license holder who's cited for that, if they can establish a number of things, this person used a false identification to gain access. Reliance was made based upon that representation. The person appeared as though they were, to a reasonable person would appear as though they're of the legal drinking age, et cetera, et cetera. It's a number of factors like that. Well, multiply that by 39 people and imagine what that might look like in terms of a court case. So if we ultimately, and we're still having discussions, it's not set in stone that we're going to have that type of trial, but it's possible. And if that's the case, then it might take us a while to get the scheduling together on it. I can tell you this, I think the absolute earliest I would anticipate that kind of coming in for a landing would probably be sometime in mid to late July. And I say that's the absolute earliest. I anticipate it's likely will actually take a little bit longer than that. And of course, there's also a second citation that relates to an earlier incident with a somewhat simpler fact pattern, just a couple of persons involved. So it's not going to be instantaneous, but it's not like we're going to be talking next year, or probably not even very late summer or fall. I think it'll be sooner than that.
Thank you. All right, we've had a recommendation from the mayor for a motion. Is there a motion from the committee?
I would move to postpone any action on this until the legal matters are resolved, to know what's happened there, to make a decision based upon the outcomes there. Postpone until a certain date, but that date being when there has been a judgment for us to actually look at, and whether it's like they're fine or there has been some sort of outside the law activity.
Yes, ma'am.
I would honestly recommend that no one second that. That puts us in a very precarious position, because postponement will likely lead to a non-renewal of license, and without proper grounds, as the city attorney advised, first of all, I think it might harm due process, but I would not recommend you take no action, because the license will expire at 11:59 p.m. on June 30th. We won't meet before then, and we very likely won't have action before then.
I'll do you one better than that, Mayor. I hate to put it in such stark terms, but I think that motion may just flat out be out of order.
Okay.
I don't think that taking no action on a request for renewal of a Chapter 125 license is within the options of the Common Council. I think it either has to be approved for renewal, suspended, or revoked. I don't think that there's, an option to just not take an action. So.
And again, this will be advisory to council next week, but given those three options, is there a motion from the committee?
I will move to approve with the understanding that efforts continue to be made to reduce the serving of underage people, because ultimately the safety of our community is important, and you have a big establishment, you have a big impact on the reputation that our city has, that our downtown has. Let's keep it safe and have people coming in for the right reasons.
Thank you. I will second that motion. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed would be no.
No.
All right, and that will approve, is it 3, 4? 4 to-
Majority consent.
All right. Okay, moving on, I would like to do our temporary class licenses together. That would be items 2F and 2G. These are mostly renewals. F1 is Mid-State Roller Derby, who will be having 2 bouts at Willett Arena this summer, June 22nd and August 3rd. And then the Portage County Democratic Party will be holding their picnic on August 25th at the Pipner Building. Also, Holy Spirit Parish will be holding their Spirit Fest the end of July, and North Central Conservancy Trust will be holding their annual dinner in September 19th. Is there a motion from the committee for those temporary licenses?
I would move to approve.
Approval by Lang, second by Burr. All right, any questions from the committee? Any concerns from law enforcement?
No issues.
Okay, any comments from the audience? All right, all those in favor of approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed would be no, and that passes unanimously. Item 3 are the request to hold events and street closings. Again, these are all kind of recurring events. We have the Mid-State Roller Derby bouts, the 4th of July Parade, annually on the 4th, downtown on Main Street, Riverfront Rendezvous, July 4th through 6th at Pfiffner Park, and again, the Democratic Party picnic. I believe only the parade and Riverfront are calling for street closings. Otherwise, it's things that have happened before and gone well. So is there a motion from the committee?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Burr, second by Steinmetz, not Boozy. Is there any questions from the committee? Concerns from law enforcement?
No issues. 4th of July Parade in Riverfront, we deal with every single year, and law enforcement will be there, and auxiliary will be there as well.
Very good. Any questions, comments from the audience? All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed would be no, and that passes unanimously. Item number 4 is a beekeeper permit for Christina Falstead on Bliss Avenue. There was a lot of documentation and information in the packet about the yard situation there. Is there a motion for that permit?
I would move approval.
Approval by Lang. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Boozy. Any questions, comments from the committee?
It's a great place to set up bees. If there's anybody that knows bees, it's me. I can't believe what a fantastic place you have. That whole area is full of, like, our forestry department's done a fantastic job. There's so much bee forage down there. I'm hoping that I can get some honey out of y'all eventually.
All right.
At retail price.
Yes. Yes.
All right, all those, oh, is there a motion? Did we get a motion in a second?
We did.
All right, all those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Congratulations on your permit. And our final item, number 5, is a resolution committing to 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality. This resolution is brought to us by Wisconsin Conservation Voters. Maxwell Johnson and his coalition has been working for many months to put this together, but this is our first opportunity to discuss this as a committee and hear feedback from staff or other council members and the public. This document or resolution does make mention of a path to sustainable point, which was a document that was created in 2008, 16 years ago this month. I think there is wide support in the city for us to reaffirm and get back on track with some of those commitments and goals, but there are a lot of different ways to do that. This resolution lays out a few very specific goals. So I guess this is just the beginning of a conversation on how we move forward, and I'm eager to hear what everyone has to say. Again, ultimately, our decision or the direction of the committee will be advisory to council next week. Yes, Mayor.
Just a couple of comments, because I've talked to Maxwell about this before, and also Alderperson Lang several months ago. The first thing I want to say is nobody in the city wrote this resolution. This resolution came from Mr. Johnson, who is paid by the Wisconsin Conservation Voters to do certain things. And I think it is overcommitting what we can achieve. I made a list, just briefly, of some of the things that we have done, and I see Mary Maller's in here. Several of the people in this room can speak to the things that we've done. Installing GPSs on our plows and garbage trucks to create more efficient routes and use less fuel. Installing, at the time, the largest solar array in central Wisconsin, our utility garage, using the effluent water from the wastewater treatment center to run through heat pumps to heat and cool that facility, which is powered by the solar. That building is almost completely off-grid. Prior to that, we had a biofuel generator that we used the methane from our wastewater treatment facility. We cleaned it, we ran through the biogas generator, creating 98% of the electricity for the facility, and then we captured the heat from that and used it to heat the buildings. Now we use a lot of that to dry the product, creating a Class B biosolid, I believe it's called, or Class A, which is a saleable product. It's not the sludge that we need special permits to put on fields and things like that. Using the green hinges, so some of our bays for vehicles are heated or cooled. Fire department, streets garage, those sorts of things. Putting green hinges on has reduced our utility costs by just pushing that weather stripping against the door. We worked with the MREA to create a multi-county solar bulk buy program, first of its kind that I'm aware of, that grew for several years. Streamlined our zoning to make it easier for residential solar installation, earning us a SolSmart Gold status. Right now, it's a series of check boxes to install residential or commercial solar in the city of Stevens Point. Adding bicycle infrastructure, building requirements to encourage non-motorized vehicles, getting us a bike-friendly silver status, the only one in central Wisconsin. Just last year, we purchased our first hybrid police car. Electric vehicle charging stations, we put the first 2 in the area, free of charge, city-owned, and we now have over 50 electric vehicle charging stations in the area. Not all public, but it's working. We first helped start the first community compost program, diverting organics out of our waste stream, saving us not only fuel and money sending it to a landfill, but providing valuable compost. And that's taken over by Bucket Ruckus now, and they've been running with it. We use our own compost. Our leaves and things like that are shipped out to a farmer who uses them as compost rather than paying to get them hauled off. And then working with the Citizens Climate Lobby for legislation at the state and federal level. We've been doing that. Motion lights, LED lights in the city. We've been making good progress on reducing our energy consumption, which is the easiest way to get rid of carbon. Reducing our energy consumption, reducing our carbon footprint, going as efficient as we can. We have discussed several times the possibility of having a sustainability coordinator, even getting a pretty sizable request for a donation option to fund that position. And talking with staff, each and every one of them does a really good job at finding those grants that we're eligible for, saving where we can. And they said, no, we'd rather use that money for seed to do the matching share when we get grants. So we have established a fund now that we can use to offset the match for grants for energy efficiencies. Committing to 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality, which is, I still don't quite understand that one, by 2024. That's 15 years, a little over 15 years. The budget's set for this year.
2040.
I said it again, 2040. 2040. It's the dyslexia thing. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does. Thank you. Carbon neutrality and 100% clean energy by 2040. The committee right before you just voted to approve a fossil fuel-based fleet vehicle that we expect to get in 2028 and have in service for 25 years. That one right there puts us past 2040. The garbage trucks, depending on budgets, may still be in service in 2040. I think the appropriate thing to do is send it to staff with some of your desires. What can we commit to? But committing to 100% clean energy by 2040, I think is unachievable. We talk about, in the resolution, it talks about the Paris Agreement, which was done in 2015, and they said they're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50 to 52% by 2030. We're 8 years into it. 8.7%. They haven't even done 9% out of their goal, and they've got about 7 years left. Greenhouse gas reduction targets, what some of these other cities did in the third whereas, I think is great. We do make progress. We are committed to taking care of our environment, reducing our carbon footprint, but to say we're going to be 100% clean energy by 2040, I think is unachievable, and that diminishes the value of a resolution. You are resolving to do this. It uses the word commit. You are committing to 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality by 2040. Now, clean energy means no CO2s. The creation of concrete creates CO2. This council has resolved to provide safe routes to school by creating sidewalks in areas that they're not in currently. We also fund those. A couple years ago, the council voted to take it off the taxpayer, and the city's going to fund it, which is taxpayer money, but not the individual taxpayers. We've committed $90,000 in the budget to do our sidewalk replacement. That's going to count, because that creates CO2. The fossil fuels, I don't think we can get there. And we've talked to the directors. Yes, they make electric fire trucks. I haven't seen an electric excavator yet, or the dump trucks, but we buy vehicles for a specific purpose. That hybrid vehicle that we got at the police department, I've heard we've reduced our fossil fuel consumption significantly. Now, the electricity that we get isn't even under our control. The electricity that goes to charge that hybrid vehicle comes from probably public service, right? And I think the last I saw, they were still only about 30% renewable. So there are things in here out of our control. Carbon neutrality, kind of a shell game, right? Carbon neutrality means you can offset some of this bad stuff by doing good stuff over here, having somebody do good stuff. And one of those is planting trees. We're Tree City, USA. We have a little over 7,000 trees in the city inventory. It takes about 240 trees to offset the carbon emissions from one car, not a truck, not a pickup or a dump truck or a grader. So that gives us less than 30 cars that we're offsetting, and we're Tree City, USA. Are we going to be able to plant enough trees to offset that carbon? It talks about creating a sustainability commission tasked with creating a baseline of the city's energy consumption and carbon emissions. Well, we've got all of our energy costs and utilization from 2015 on up. I can tell you how many gallons of fuel each vehicle uses within the city. That information already exists. The creation of the commission to do that, I don't know who's going to do the work. We don't have the staff resources to do things that we've already done for another commission. And I think there's some work that needs to be done here. What we should be doing is reaffirming our commitment to those continual reductions in energy consumption and reducing our carbon footprint, reducing our energy consumption. That should be the priority. So I wanted to get that out there before there was a motion made, because I think it's on the right track, but this resolution came from somewhere else. It was someone who's charged with getting the resolution passed. I think what we need to do is refer it to the city staff, get the council's goals, and get a resolution created that we can get behind, instead of effectively making a promise that I don't believe we can keep, and I'm not sure how many of you believe we can keep it either. Completely clean energy, 100% in 15 years. Thank you.
All right, moving back to the committee. To begin the discussion, is there a motion?
If I could say, I'll move to approve it, and then we'll discuss.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Burr. All right, discussion, Alderling?
First, I'd kind of like to correct a few things of this. This isn't just from Maxwell Johnson. this is a collaborative effort. I can't say this is the final product that I would totally have approved of, but getting some of the language and referencing things that relate to Stevens Point's legacy as a path to a sustainable Stevens Point, you know, that I can say, like, that stuff's in here because of the conversations that I've had with Maxwell around this. The concerns that the mayor brings forward, I feel many of them are valid. The idea that life is not like carbon-based and we can break free of carbon is kind of something that I can't wrap my mind around. For carbon-based life forms, how do we become carbon-free? If we're talking like fuels and carbon-based fuels and all that, that's a whole nother discussion, but the language of 100% carbon-free, I still kind of like not sure about. But I feel it's a lofty goal, and you got to shoot high. The other thing is, if there's anybody who can do this, it's us. We are built for this. If we can and set a high bar and fall short, and as he's like the continuing steps, this is something that we can move towards. Perhaps that is more of what we're talking about here than anything. If there's some language that like makes people a little uncomfortable, I get it. This is one of these 100% carbon-free. That's Governor Evers. I would love to talk with him a little bit more about what he means by 100% carbon-free by 2050. Because how do we get off of carbon when we are carbon-based? The other things that I bring forward here, like, we can become a carbon neutral economy. It is going to take creating a sustainability commission that creates a baseline. We got to know where we are to know where we've moved, whether we've made progress or not. That's going to take work. That's going to take community buy-in. And my conversations with the community is there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of momentum. There are people in our city that want to see this done and want to engage in the work that that commission would be doing. So is it perfect? I can't say it's perfect. Is it something that we as a community should be shooting for? Absolutely. And that's why I would say let's go for it.
Other committee members? Steinmetz?
I see where you're coming from, Mr. Mayor, but that list of achievements that you led off with, I think that's a testament to why we are the right city for a project like this. I know there's always going to be room for tweaking and improvement and more insight from city staff, directors, but the solar panels that we have up, the efficiencies that we're working on implementing, I think to not set a bar high for fear of not clearing it, it would be a shame. Let's start the conversation and start tracking how well we're doing so that we can show off and eventually become the city that other people look to steal best practices from.
Other committee members?
I'd like to jump in. Yeah, just because I agree with a lot of the language in here too, and we can really get pedantic on what does this mean, what does this mean. I mean, side by side, what's 100% clean energy? How do we define that? How do we find the next line? I think what's important and what the sense here is that we have an initiative in front of us. We have like initiatives that have been started, brought up. We talked about, I think there was reference to 2006. I saw the list that came together. There's a lot of good things. We can get a lot of good things on the list. The issue I want to see is the interconnectedness and the not just a catalyst to start something, but to continue it and to interweave it into what would be city staff, what would be department heads. How can we make this not only a mandate that we're going to start something today, we're going to form a commission today, but we are going to intertwine that with best practice. Where are we talking to department heads on what we're seeing, not only within their department, because they are hyper-focused and do well with their departments, but what are we seeing a level above that? How can we connect these things together? Because all of these initiatives running around in their silos potentially can do great things, but connecting them together and bringing it internal then, I think that's going to be the part for me that's I'm going to need to hear the plan there. I don't need to hear deep on every initiative that we're talking about, but I need to know how we're going to form this within the city and make it a city staff-led initiative to some degree, because that's really where the rubber hits the road in my mind, and how we get traction with something like this. So while I do support it as it exists, I do want to see the input that we'll get from people that are going to initialize this.
Thank you. Is there members of the, yes, if you want to just, you can kind of gather on the, I guess it would be the left side of the room if you would like to speak, and we'll just take people one at a
I think they
time.
call that stage left, right?
Stage left.
'Cause it's their right side.
Yeah. All right. If you could just state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Heather Phelps, and I am at 1409B Riverview Avenue here in Stevens Point. I moved here a year ago, and one of the first things I did was I attended the Energy Fair, and one of my favorite sessions was a panel discussion from the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition, where Mayor Wiese spoke about the sustainability initiatives and the sustainability ethic happening here in Stevens Point. That was when I knew I had found a home here in Stevens Point. It's also why I am quite disappointed in Mayor Wiese's statements about this resolution. It is so cool what Stevens Point has already done, but we do not have time globally or here in Stevens Point to rest on our laurels and say, we did cool stuff, we're done now. This is a time to be creative about what we can do next and not be afraid of committing to keep moving forward. We shouldn't say we are already failing, so we won't even try. We can try harder. We can be an example to other people. I would much rather live in a city that tried for something ambitious like this and didn't quite make it than one that never even attempted it in the first place. And may I also state that electric excavators and electric dump trucks do exist at this point. Not everything is easy yet. Not everything is cheap yet. But we have enough to get started with, and that will definitely take up all our time until the rest of it exists as well. So, please take this next step. Live up to the Stevens Point's promise with this resolution and this commitment, and have the people with this commission to move that forward. And this is going to make Stevens Point a cleaner and healthier place to live and secure a better future for all the children of this city. So please vote yes on this resolution for clean energy and a sustainability commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Well stated, ma'am. Thank you. Hi, I'm Jackie Guthrie. I'm in Alder District 2. I live at 2700 Peck Street. 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality by 2040 is super ambitious. It'll require a lot of focus and resources and leaning into change at a rate that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, perhaps especially city staff. But an ambitious pace is the only way that our municipality and our global community will avoid the human suffering and economic catastrophe that is projected to occur if we proceed to reduce emissions at a pace that makes us comfortable. So I say let's put our shoulder into it together as a community. Let's allocate the resources and proactively do our part as every other municipality and community should be doing right now for our children and in the spirit of Stevens Point. I yield back.
Thank you, Alder Guthrie.
Hello, Maxwell 2345 Jersey Street, just across the street. So I've lived here for almost a decade. I think I've spoken with all of you at some point or another. I came as a student, I explored the city, and after an extra university, I actually got to go out with Citizens Climate Lobby, the organization the mayor mentioned, and go lobby at the federal level. And they do a lot of great work at the federal level, but I think that one thing I took away from that 24-hour train ride back home was that at the federal level, they have a job to do, and they have passed lots of money already to allow local governments like us to take advantage of this federal money and implement climate solutions. This resolution sets out a goal, 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality. We can get bogged down in the specifics of what that means, but what we're saying is we're setting a beacon and we are going to achieve, if not completely, we're going to work towards this goal. Many other, over a dozen other communities, Madison, Dane County, Eau Claire County, Green Bay, Wausau most recently did this. They committed to a 100% either carbon neutrality or clean energy commitment. And they did this, I think, last February, Wausau. La Crosse has done another great job. If you haven't seen their La Crosse's clean or climate action plan, I would highly encourage you to do so. That is a shining beacon of what we could accomplish here in the city. That plan in La Crosse also started out with a commitment to clean energy and carbon neutrality. So this goal, paired with the creation of a committee comprised of community members, continuing this entire conversation that we're having and we're starting right now, we can set out that beacon to work towards. This isn't going to be accomplished by one simple project. This isn't going to be accomplished by discussing it in committee in this format. It's an ongoing mission to reduce our impact on the environment and improve both the economic and social well-being of our entire community. Like I said, with all the federal money available, I think that we should be taking this action, and I think that we can do a lot of good to help out our community. UWSP here in the heart of our city has already pledged to the Second Nature Pledge, and they have begun doing their carbon reduction strategies. They're doing, I think it's 2 years of planning in order to figure out how to reduce their carbon emissions on campus. I will just end with a quick quote from Gaylord Nelson that I have seen peppered throughout a lot of city documents that have passed this council. The fate of a living planet is the most important issue facing humankind. So I urge you to vote yes on this resolution and set our city on the path to a sustainable Stevens Point.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eston Whitfield. We live at 3401 Harmony Lane here in Stevens Point. I moved here with my family in 2020, summer of 2020, from Hawaii, but we started out our journey in Kenya, which is where I'm from, in East Africa. So 2019, we moved as a family to Hawaii. We were going to be there a minimum of 2 years, but COVID cut that short. Their mom and I are both pilots. She's a helicopter pilot. I'm an airplane pilot. We were working in Kenya together as pilots, commercial pilots, and that's where we met, and where these guys were born. And we moved to Hawaii for their mom to be a helicopter pilot there. And as a pilot, I've always had this climate guilt, dumping lots of exhaust into the atmosphere. I love flying. It was a great career, a lot of good stuff, but also always this sense of guilt. Anyway, COVID came along and changed all of our plans in Hawaii, and we magically ended up in Stevens Point. We're very excited to have landed here. It's a great place to have a family. It's a great place to raise kids, good schools. It's green Circle Trail. It feels like a place that I want to continue to call home and feel proud of. And, kids are at school out at Sunset Lake and Bannock, and I've changed career while I've been here. I've stopped flying. I've gone back to school to get a master's, become a high school science teacher, and I've been student teaching here at P.J. Jacobs, 9th grade for the last few months, and teaching climate change. It's kind of a heavy one to teach the kids. And in doing that, it's really got me thinking about, you learn so much from the kids as a teacher. And the kids are concerned. They might not understand the exact science, the carbon and how it works, and CO2 is just a tiny amount of the actual atmosphere, but it's a very effective greenhouse gas. Same with methane, very tiny amount in the atmosphere, but it's really effective. What does that mean? Why is it bad to have it in the atmosphere? But the kids know that there's a problem, and they want to be part of the solution. And I can't, I think it needs to be ambitious. I think it's great what Mayor Wiese has shown us that it's already happening here. I love what you guys are all talking about. I think we are one of the places that should be a beacon. I totally see it. I see that vision, and I think for the kids and the future generations, we owe it to them, and it's got to be ambitious because it's happening right now. Every headline you read every day is, doom and gloom about the environment. So. I say vote yes for this thing. Let's get it going, get the conversation going, and do some good work. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Greg Knight, 424 Dearborn Avenue. Wife and I moved here about a year ago. We came from a county in northern Wisconsin, and we both lived in a community of about 5,000 people. I served on the city council there for about 16 years, so kind of understand what you guys are looking at and dealing with here. One thing I want to say is that, this resolution I think is pretty good as written. So I think what it does is it demonstrates that the city is going to show some leadership about knowing what our carbon footprint is, the baseline. My understanding is that you already have competed for, received a grant to establish your carbon footprint to kind of know what your baseline is at. So if you're already halfway there, why wouldn't you continue with the rest of the resolution, which asks you to assemble a committee, okay? The committee doesn't obligate you to spend any money. You know that every year you control the purse strings. So whatever comes out of committee recommendations and things like that, you choose to do or you choose not to do based on what you can afford to do. You already do a lot of things that are good, that are helping us deal with the issue of climate change, which is a real issue. Now, we're still going to have a fire truck that runs on a diesel engine 20 years from now, no doubt about it. We're not going to get away from gasoline engines and burning carbon, forever. But we do need to work at and push the envelope on how do we reduce our carbon footprint if we're going to do something about climate change. If we do nothing about climate change, we will continue to suffer the effects and the impacts of that. I'm not going to take an hour to lecture you on what all that is, but there's a lot of things happening. It's going to rock our world whether we want it to or not. I'm sure the Canadians, when they send more of their smoke south this summer, will experience that again. But, it affects us whether we want to or not. I noticed the home of the Green Bay Packers has passed a resolution very much like this one. So if Green Bay can do it, we can too. And it does burn me that Wausau's passed a resolution, but we have not yet. We came to this community because we do believe, and it is in fact, a community with a lot of energy and a belief in the future. And you guys do things. You do things that a lot of other communities don't do. And that's a big reason why you still have a lot of your young people here. I can tell you in my association with Maxwell that A, he is not a communist. B, this is not some sort of left-wing, trying to turn Point into a bunch of liberals. We wouldn't want to do that. My conversations with the younger generations in this community, which, again, you've got a fantastic future coming up here. But these are folks that truly want to do something about this issue as well as other issues in this community. That's why there's this energy here. That's why there's this involvement here. And again, I don't think this resolution is a big deal. If this was happening in that little small town I used to live in for 25 years, it's a doable thing. It really is. And for me, I'm more concerned about the message it sends. So I would say do it, because you're brave enough to reach out into the future, wherever that future might be, whatever those future challenges might be. You're going to say 100% clean energy. Now, are we going to get there in 15 years? I don't know. Maybe not. And if the critics want to look at us in 15 years and saying, hey, you didn't do it, well, that's nice. But you know what? I bet you'll at least be 80% there, okay? 50% there. You know what? That's success, because you're going forwards, not backwards, okay?
Thank you.
William John Coletta, 2209 Ellis Street, Stevens Point, and I've just got feelings to express. So I wrote them down so I would go on too long. So I support the resolution of a goal for reaching 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality for our community by 2040. Why? I asked myself this morning. Well, if we don't, what do we tell our young people? It's the first thing that came to my mind. And I listened to young people. Most all of them that I've talked to in my many years as a professor at UWSP want a just and sustainable world. They are passionate about it. And note, if one wishes to keep one's finger on the pulse of our community, pay attention to what the young people think is cool. And I've noticed that with many young people, it's cool to want to stop global warming. Playing around with that pun, but I think there's some value.
Old people too.
Right? Yeah, old people too, yeah. But there's nothing quite as cool, right, as a cool old person. But this idea of it's cool to want to stop global warming, I'm playing around with the idea of cool and warm, right? But that's when you know something's working, man, when it comes cool to do it. And that's what I see. It's becoming cool. And I started thinking about, the young people that I teach, or who teach me, right? The biking they're engaged in, the supporting of community-sponsored agriculture, eating at farm-to-table restaurants, shopping at Process downtown, the co-op, living in walkable communities. I see this happening all around the Jefferson School area where I live, which 25 years ago when they wanted to shut down Jefferson School, they were saying, well, it's a transient low-income community. Man, it is coming back. There's young people and the walkability index. It's just really cool to see, right? It's cool to see the desire to stop the warming. So, like I say, listen to the young people, not only listen to those with a vested interest merely in the past, though we must help those people with such a vested interest understand how a sustainable future works for them too. I also believe that the climate change will make the Stevens Point-Wausau corridor in the 21st century a significant growth hub for and a site of significant prosperity. That's what I see in the future, right? If you look at the history, of the Madison-Stevens Point corridor, I coordinated the environmental studies program at the UW there for many years, and I was able to identify 5 of the most important people in the history of North America, let's say the United States, with respect to environmental thinking. 3 are from the sand counties, as Aldo Leopold called. 3, right? If we bring in Gaylord Nelson, right? Bring them towards us a little bit. But we got Leopold and Muir, right? Then there's also Rachel Carson, after whom I named my daughter, right? And Henry David Thoreau. But we got 3 of them here, basically in the central part of the. Right? It's an amazing place, and UWSP, the largest undergrad college in natural resource management, first place that environmental ethics was ever taught in North America. So I see a continuation of that, in that the Stevens Point-Wausau corridor in the 21st century is going to be a significant growth hub for and a site of significant prosperity. We are going to be an important place regionally and nationally. In a sense, we have no choice, right, but to go with this resolution, because we need to be able to channel this growth that I see. The climate change is going to help bring about here, because we're further north. We have water, right? And we're the way we think. We're there, right? So we have no choice but to channel this growth in a sustainable way, as in the long run, prosperity and sustainability are the same thing. I can't see how that can be argued against other than short-term thinking. Right? So prosperity and sustainability are the same thing. Green Bay understands this. Right? They've chosen 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality for their community by 2040, so must we. So, and then the last thing I want to say quickly, I really honor what the mayor said. You know, the rhetoric of 100%, it's right? And also, Mr. Lang, too, some of the problems. You know, respiration. When I respire, I'm putting CO2 out into the atmosphere. I mean, holy cow, I guess we can stop the photosynthesis respiration cycle. But I get what you guys are saying, because 100% scares some people. But 100% to me doesn't mean that there's no room for competition, for coming up a little short, for a range of approaches. 100% is an aim, right? It's a sign, really, of a unified effort to build a more just and sustainable world, even as there are diverse ideas about how to achieve it, right? So 100% for me just stands for being all in on the goal of achieving a just and sustainable, that is to say, a prosperous future for all of us. And here I conclude, it doesn't stand 100% for there only being one way even to achieve this sustainability and prosperity. And so I want to close with the idea that sustainability is prosperity. I call that SIP, right? So I would like to say, sip on that idea, right? That sustainability is prosperity, and I think we are the corridor where this is going to happen in the future, which is what makes me proud. And I was proud just listening to what the mayor had to say about what we're doing, right? So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
My name is Mary Maller. I have a frog in my throat most of the time these days, as my mother did. I live at 716 First Avenue. I've lived in Stevens Point for 10 years, but I've lived in Portage County for 40 years. And I think Portage County is, for many reasons, a stellar place to live, and for many reasons. I'd like to express my gratitude to all the people who have spoken with such passion about the need to follow through on this. I had written a short statement, a personal statement, why it's important to me, but alas, I don't have the vision to read this size font. So I think that I may be able to submit it as part of the record.
Absolutely.
You can give it to the clerk. Yep.
And so I would like to see. Can you give it to me? Thank you. Just as we have a director for development in our city, a very effective position, a man with a lot of experience in that position, and a lot of support from the rest of the city government. I think that's what's needed. I don't think we can rely on the current staff in the city to come up with a prioritized list of things that need to be done when they don't have any power over the budget. There has to be somebody who's, actually it would have to be a collective of people who are passionate about this, just as many of the speakers have been. So I thank everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Badoon?
I don't really have much to add. I think from my perspective, the mayor covered a whole lot. I think much of what I would have otherwise said if I would elaborate was covered in that. I think as far as from staff, we're always have an eye and ear towards sustainability, how to always improve things. It is always a challenge to try to balance that with the current technology. We are market driven. We don't build green, garbage trucks, which Superintendent Johnson was just taking a quick look and, mind you, just others quickly, 2.4 million versus 360,000. It would be nice, but can we afford to do that? And what else can't we get done that we need to provide for, the cities? I've heard a number of things that say the numbers don't matter. I'm an engineer. I think numbers do matter. If you put 100% in, I think that's our target. If we're willing to settle for something shorter than that, then maybe we should pick, as the mayor even suggested, a more reasonable approach to it. Or we should really search forward and target that. And all I can otherwise say with that is, whichever way you go, we can work with that as staff. But I hope that also then comes with the commitment for capital dollars to otherwise do that, because implementation of these things over the next 15 years is not going to be cheap, and we are going to be following the market. So if the market isn't otherwise there with the products we need to actually achieve that, which is really what we do already, is trying to find the most efficient things that we can. Some of them are a little bit even kind of not necessarily in the true zero emissions or so, but it's a matter of reducing energy and costs. Just like recently we got a mini paver. Well, what does that allow us to do? It allows us to otherwise be faster with the work to otherwise do that. It more so right sizes the types of work that we're doing versus bringing in very large diesel driven equipment that actually emits more emissions than what we can do ourselves. Also traveling about the county, the region, as far as for contractors to do that, oftentimes in multiple MOBs, so they'll come and do a base course, prep base course, then come back at some later time to do that. So you add up all those trips, us doing it ourselves is saving energy, reducing greenhouse gases. It's those sorts of things that we're always trying to think of and implement. We do it in everything that we do. So I guess I'll just otherwise leave it at that. I think they said, the mayor summarized it. It's a big, long list. And even as the mayor said, I don't know if you actually mentioned the number, but as far as concrete as it is today, and mind you, hopefully they'll make some changes, and if they make changes, we will too, but that produces approximately 8% of the anthropological CO2 emissions of the world. If they were a country, they would be the third largest producer of CO2. Just as an industry, that's what they do. It's those sorts of things that really are going to make a difference in the future, but we don't necessarily drive that. We have to buy what's readily available. That's what we utilize. But we're always looking for alternatives, always looking for a better way to do it. And I'd rather look for some support to say, how can we continue to do what we're doing, than set an unrealistic target and wonder about how we're going to fail. I'd rather look to something, how can we succeed? And I guess from my perspective as staff, I look at this and say, gosh, you've set us up to fail. How do I get there? Can we work on something? That'd be my request of you. We work on something that is, okay, now help me succeed. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica Anderson, 924 2nd Street, Stevens Point. I've been here for the past 6-ish years after graduating at UWSP. Went to school with Max. We were both in 350 Stevens Point organization on campus, which is like an environmental organization. So we did a lot of work with that. But I graduated in like natural resource planning, management, and environmental studies, and I have been living in this community just like kind of eager for more involvement within that realm, especially related to city government. Just kind of like waiting for something to be passed so that I could, kind of be involved with that. On more of a government scale than rather like nonprofit. I did work for MREA for a short period of time, and try to do other community organizing around this, but there's only so much that can be done outside of city government. And like if there were a committee created, I think that's the thing that I see the most important on this resolution, as most important on this resolution right now, because we need people to look at those other pieces of the resolution and really solidify like what is achievable, and what can we do, what have we done, more of a comprehensive like understanding of all of Mike Wiesa and what you've said, but what we've done over the past years and what we could do into the future. So I think having a committee like that would be really important to, again, like do some studying of the past, do some thinking about the future and creating like realistic goals. Again, this is, just like, this isn't a contract. This isn't like, it's just a framework, something to shoot for, and something that like encourages energy around it. And I just want to say I would gladly sit on that committee once it's created. So, thanks.
Superintendent?
Hey, thank you. First off, I gotta say, I really loved all the passion that I have heard here tonight. I spoke earlier in the Finance Committee, ironically, getting some garbage trucks, diesel-powered, approved. One thing that I would like to share with the audience and the committee tonight is that we have pointed out many of the aspects that we are working on for green, and again, this passion that we have had here tonight is something that is encouraging. I would like to share that these are conversations that we do have daily amongst our fleet manager, our fleet staff, our stock clerk, and in fact that our fleet manager and myself recently attended a fleet conference, and most of the aspects of that fleet conference was talking about sustainability and the future. And while I'm very supportive of working towards the betterment and sustainability, I would like to further point out some of the things that have been done and things that are moving forward, including not only did we just purchase our first hybrid squad car last year, in fact we are awaiting 6 more of those this year. And as we continue down the process, right now hybrids versus electric squad cars, just with the operations that we have, they're operated 24/7. We don't really have the luxury of charging them just yet. Doesn't mean that in the future we wouldn't, work towards another solution, but we are very focused on, especially transitioning anything that we can to hybrids, going that. One thing that I found really interesting in sitting through the Big 3 presentation during the fleet conference it wasn't necessarily that the Big 3 were pulling away from the electric vehicles, but they were looking at more innovative solutions such as like hydrogen fuel cell. So from our standpoint in fleet, we felt like we would be doing a disservice if we put all of our eggs looking towards investing in full electric, when we truly do believe that there's better down the line. I couldn't give you a timeline, and I think that's where a lot of the issues sit here tonight, is that, by 2040, maybe not. I just wanted to point out that we are solely focused. When we talk and we sit and we talk individual vehicles, even if we're buying 5 of the same trucks, we look individually on how they serve each department and where they're going to fit and what's going to work the best for that vehicle. And sustainability is heavy on the forefront. One quick correction, the garbage trucks that were approved in the Finance Committee tonight, or recommended by Finance Committee, those aren't 2.4 million. It was actually the garbage truck, or the fire truck. If that same truck was approved in diesel to electric, that's 2.4 million is the equivalent. So there is some cost there, but that's not the sole decision in our factors. And we just really wanted to make sure that we're sharing with staff that we have these conversations, and maybe internally we have not done enough job providing that information to the public to know that what we are working on for sustainability wise. We would like the opportunity to maybe work on some of that language in some of our future fleet plans, to be able to present that at a future time of what we are doing, so that way perhaps a lot of the language in the resolution and language and the research and that we do every day could maybe align closer.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Chief Moody?
Just to piggyback on that and actually give the actual numbers, as we did do the research in purchasing our last engine, we looked at a hybrid fire engine. The first one that Pierce actually put out was actually in Madison, Wisconsin, and went and looked at that apparatus, did all the research, put all the data together. The apparatus runs on the electric aspect. When it arrives on a fire scene, the diesel motor does kick in to run the pump. And if the batteries get low enough, they'll actually kick on to the diesel motor. When we purchased, or when we looked at putting the purchase of our Engine 4 together, which is currently being built, it was about $650,000 for that apparatus. To buy it as an electric hybrid, it was $1.3 million. It was an additional $50,000 to $80,000 just to put the hookups that were needed into Station 1 to be able to run the electric apparatus. The 2 batteries that are in that apparatus cost $300,000 each. And at the time of the research, when we were looking at going to this hybrid apparatus, there was no warranty on those batteries either. And when we're looking at trying to keep a piece of equipment in our fleet for 20 to 30 years, that's important to us. It is very, very important that we're looking at the sustainability, the carbon footprint, and trying to do what's best out there. And like the superintendent said, we are looking at these things. It is important to us. And that's why I was able to throw those numbers out so quickly, because we've done the research and the homework every time we go to purchase an apparatus. So a little bit from the firehouse and what we're looking at as far as hybrids or diesels.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Okay.
First of all, Heather, I want to apologize. If I gave you the impression that I think we're done and we've done enough, that is absolutely not where I was going. I am 100% committed to making continual improvements for as long as I have breath in my body. We've done a lot of great things, and we've done those without a commitment to 100%. And that was the next point, is that words are important. Even Maxwell, when he spoke, he said, strive for that 100%. Well, if that's what you mean, then say it. Say what you mean, because that's not what this says. This says the city commits to achieving 100% clean energy. I think I'm much more comfortable saying we're going to work towards 100% clean energy, because the words are important, and that's why when you say it doesn't commit us, you're right, it doesn't. But a resolution is a promise, and I'm not going to make a promise that I can't keep. That's why I asked you to send it to staff, rework it, say what we mean. If we mean we're going to work towards 100% every single day and have that in the front of our mind, then say that. But I have an issue with the city committing to achieving 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality, which again, still, it should be one or the other. Both are, if you're clean energy, you are carbon neutral. But you can't have, I don't know why it's both, but the words are important. The earlier item on the agenda with a bartending or a liquor license renewal, the words in the ordinances, the words in the statute are important. And that's my issue. I don't want to give the impression that we're not going to continue to do everything regardless of what happens here. We're going to do everything within our power to make sure that our decisions are sustainable, carbon reducing, and good for the environment. And we're going to continue to do that regardless. But to say we are going to achieve 100% is the part that I take issue with. And I hope you understand where that comes from. I'm not trying to be a roadblock here, because again, I stated those things because that's what we do. But how did you get here tonight? Because each and every one of you had a carbon-free option. Some of us do very well. Yes, thank you, Mr. Connors. And I know Mary. Mary walks everywhere. I see Mary walking all the time. But there are options. What did you choose tonight? How do you heat and cool your home? So there's options there.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ambitious goal, and I don't know if we can meet it either. And maybe we can't today or next year, and maybe we can 12 years from now. I don't know. And I understand the importance also of making achievable goals. That said, I think this is the beginning of the conversation, and I think there is room to change and adapt this resolution in the future. Perhaps there are additional goals that we want to add that aren't here now. Perhaps the language could be tweaked. I think there's room for the council to do that next week. And again, yeah, as the superintendent pointed out, the technology is changing. I do think that feedback from staff is really important in terms of where we are now and how we're going to move forward. I think they have a lot of plans and goals that they just currently don't have funding for. So I think getting the funding to them and getting the resources to them are important, because this will be a really expensive cost up front with, yes, you know, it will pay back in the future, but it's an expensive investment, which is why we need, you know, the federal money. We also need changes on the state level before these changes that we do here really need anything. I also understand, you know, our job as council is to set policy direction, and it's up to the staff to kind of implement that by day to day. That said, I think it is important for us to give staff the tools and resources they need in order to do this. The university, as Maxwell mentioned, is doing their climate action plan. I think there's opportunities there for us to partner and form coalitions and cost savings. But yeah, I do think it would be helpful to have some staff feedback. I think if that can be provided to council next week, those are things we can consider. But I think there is strong sentiment in the community and in staff and council to move in this direction. Ultimately, what those precise goals are, I think there's room to determine that. So that said, we have a motion and a second. All right. All those in favor of approving this towards council signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed would be no. And that approves. That will go before council next week. And with that, that's our final item. Our meeting is adjourned at 8:03 p.m.